Y'all don't really care about what we talking about. But y'all talk about it probably in y'all home without those badges and without those uniforms. I don't understand. My aunt is a cop. And it just to look at her and know that she wears something that means a slave catcher, it's not something that I should feel comfortable with. You're supposed to serve and protect, not serve and kill.
This is Josh Friedman, joined today digitally by Los Angeles-based activist Bri Webb, who has been a leader over the duration, or much of the duration, of this year's Black Lives Matter protests in the Los Angeles area, and has well been a leader of the Black Unity Group. Bri, thank you very much for joining me.
Hello, thank you.
Can we start a bit with getting into some of your backstory, where you come from, how you found yourself in the movement, and how you ended up in LA?
Yes, so I'm originally from New Orleans. I started protesting in Ferguson, Missouri due to the death of my cousin, Michael Brown. It then led me to continue to protest simply because looking around, dealing with society and dealing with being a Black woman every day, it makes you want to change something, whether it's big or small. And at the time, I knew nothing about protesting over 6 years ago, but when I started, it gave me a type of energy and a type of fire that I just couldn't put out, that I just couldn't not use up without protesting. So I continued to protest for the past 6 years. It's going on 7 now. That then led me to wanting to move to LA. I never thought I was coming to LA to actually protest. I actually was coming up here to just start a new life, getting older, just trying to set a foundation for myself. While living here, I then end up running into the uproar of George Floyd. Of course, being that I've already protested for 6 years, it didn't stop me, and there was nothing that would have stopped me from wanting to continue to protest. So I continued to get out here in LA, and I started to use my voice, and I started to use my feet and use the knowledge that I gained from Ferguson. I had an organization back in Ferguson, which I brought to LA, which is actually called DOPE, which means Determined Opportunist Powerful Educators. But while here, I ended up camping out near City Hall with a group called Black Unity LA. It was formerly known as Black Future Project. And we became very close allies. I would help them learn strategic ways to protest, to get out here and get our demands met. We would just collaborate with each other and, just try to help each other in the best way possible while still letting the police and letting the community know that we are here fighting for our rights. We are here fighting for our demands and for our freedom.
Let's talk about what's transpired with Black Unity. So you and I last spoke, or I guess probably the only time we spoke, although I've seen you in action multiple times. We spoke at the actual encampment across the street from City Hall, but that encampment has been gone for how long now? How long has it been?
It's been about 4 or 5 months. I want to say maybe a little bit less than that. Timing is not just exact, but it got raided a couple of months ago by LASD and LAPD. That was a very, very emotional day for the encampment, simply because we had been there for over 5 to 6 months, camping out 24/7, giving people the visual that we needed in order to see that everyone needs to pay attention and that everyone is being affected by this. And so with that being said, it ended up then leading to the basically the community, as far as the higher ups didn't like what we were doing. LASD took it as a threat, LAPD as well. And it was no threat. We built a community there for the community. We had a library there. We had a kitchen there. We had everything inside your home or inside a community center that you could get outside efficiently enough. So for it to be raided and shut down, it was just a shock to us all.
When you say higher up, who are the higher ups you're talking about? Higher ups in the police and sheriff's departments, or higher ups in City Hall, or
higher ups in
the
our
county
community,
government?
such as the richer people that some a lot. I'm not gonna say everyone, but there are a nice few that care nothing about the deprived people in our community. Also, higher ups being yes, those elected officials, those in the police departments, those in city hall. Because if they cared about the community and they were here for the community, then they would be doing things for the community.
I happened to visit CHOP or Chaz in Seattle, the autonomous zone that was set up there. And actually, I guess now we have a new and much different, smaller, I would assume, autonomous zone in Portland. And I don't know how familiar you may have been with some of these other autonomous zones, but was this like a CHOP and or a Chaz or an autonomous type zone, or was this something that was more of just a protest encampment?
Honestly, this was a what you would call an all-in-one. This was a basically like a retreat area. A retreat area for protesters. This was a way for protesters to connect with each other, but also make plans against helping the community, make plans against standing against the police. This was also a safe haven for most of us outside of the barricade that we created. Anytime you were inside, a lot of people felt very safe. They felt open to be able to express themselves, however that may have been. So yes, I do know the things that they created in Portland, and it was similar to that. Was it fully like that? No, but it definitely had bits and pieces of it.
So, for instance, what were a couple of the bits and pieces that are similar to something you would find in Seattle or Portland in those autonomous zones?
Well, in Portland, I know that they had blocked off the entire street in one of the areas, and they had nothing but visuals for that entire area. And those were different, like I want to say, paintings of the community that people had did. They were just different visuals for people to see. And Black Unity incorporated that by having that around their barricades, trying to have paintings and things of people that we have lost due to this system, due to everything that we're going through, that we have been going through. And it was just to show, like, hey, it does happen here.
That was something that I noticed that initially reminded me of CHOP. When I arrived and I saw paintings, I remember there were probably a couple that related to the death of Andres Guardado, who were actually receiving some news about just now. I don't know if you want to get into that, but I definitely saw the artwork at the Black Unity encampment. It seemed to me quite reminiscent of CHOP. But moving on from there, how did the police in general treat police and sheriff's deputies in Los Angeles? How in general did they treat the Black Unity protesters, not just on the day of the raid?
Oh, they care nothing for protesters in general, not just Black Unity protesters. Yes, Black Unity protesters were targeted a little bit more because they were sleeping right up under their enemy's nose. And of course, anyone wouldn't like that. That makes the enemy feel uncomfortable. But we would get pulled over for no reason. When we would go to protest, we would get singled out, we would get circled out, and they would try to arrest us. Leaving protests, they would try to harass us by pulling us over, trying to search our cars for no reason. So there were many of things that LASD and LAPD has done in order to basically, I guess what they want to call it, making us suffer or making us be quiet. And it did nothing but make us get louder.
Did you find that they were doing that to protesters in general, or were they specifically targeting Black Unity?
Honestly, with the getting pulled over, I believe that was just Black Unity because they started to call people out by name. Now, just harassing in general, doing their daily, what do you want to call it? Just check and go. They would do that to any protester. They felt like protesters are a complete threat, even though we have no weapons at all. We come out with signs and pieces of paper and pieces of plasterboard just with messages on them. So how are those threats?
From your observation, how did the police treat media who were covering Black unity and the protests, the Black Lives Matter protests in LA as a whole?
To be honest, with my own eyes, if you support Black Lives Matter in general, you are going to be treated just as a Black or a brown or indigenous person, which is nothing at all. So yes, they would hurt media the same way they would hurt Black or brown people. They would harass media. They would push media. They would try to arrest media. If the protesters got tear gas, media got tear gas. So anything that happened to a protester happened to the media. The media was not left out from that.
These media members you're referring to, are they independent reporters who are supportive of Black Lives Matter, or are we talking about local news reporters for TV stations or newspapers, or are we talking about media across the spectrum?
I'm talking about media that would simply support Black Lives Independent. It wouldn't really be local reporters like News Channel 5. No, they wouldn't get harassed. They would actually get escorted out. But if you were an independent journalist or an independent media person, you got singled out and you got treated like a protester.
By escorted out, you mean the police would escort out, say, a KTLA reporter when an unlawful assembly was declared, or when
Yes, they would
situation
escort
got
them to
violent?
a safer area, but they wouldn't treat them like they would an independent journalist or an independent media person. With an independent media person, they would point a gun at their face. They would let them know that they are in danger and that they are a threat to them, even though they had nothing but a camera or a phone with them. So you could really tell the difference between the two.
To inject a personal anecdote or two, I did experience that myself. So over the duration, sorry, we're having an echo. Over the duration of the protests, when I was covering them, which was several months, I did at multiple times have police or sheriff's deputies, actually both, point guns at me and threaten to arrest me. However, at the same time, I faced quite a lot of harassment from protesters. I don't know if that's something you ever witnessed, but there were a couple times when protesters surrounded me and blocked me from filming, followed me around a march for a half hour or so, and called me all kinds of names and threatened me. Did you witness at any point any harassment of media by protesters? And would you be able to speculate as to why that might be the case? And maybe it was only the case with a handful of streamers, but I it happened with me, and I have seen it happen with some other streamers.
Honestly, myself, the only time I see protesters not harassed, but they do circle and they will escort media out by basically shrugging against them with their shoulders, letting them know, like, hey, the only media that would be the media trying to portray protesters is if they're violent, giving lies against protesters, the ones that work hand in hand with the police. That would be the only time I would see protesters actually getting the media out. And that would be, yes, the independent journalists and the independent media people. Now, per se, I have not seen you personally, but I do understand where you feel like, hey, I'm here every day. I've been out here with you guys. Why are you all doing this to me? A lot of people get misjudged while they're out protesting, and it's not always um, the big group. It literally can be a small group of people who will feel like, oh, that person's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, or they're recording us in a way we don't want them to. And they'll get angry and they'll try to put that on to that media person. And then by the time it's circled out into the rest of the protesters, it's so much confusion that everyone at that point is just like, well, let's just get them out of here. And that is a lot of what protesters have been working on, understanding what media is there for you and what media is not there for you, so that it won't be to the point where media feels like they can't even come, because we need the media. We do. We need you all. You all are our voice when we don't have a voice.
Yeah, actually, there were multiple times throughout the protests this year, maybe not so much in LA, but I remember a vivid example from CHOP when at a certain point, people who were telling me, no, we don't want you filming, suddenly started telling me, yes, please film, please film. But I think the question remains, I mean, does everyone get to enjoy the First Amendment, or do some people get to enjoy the First Amendment more than others? Because
No,
if, oh, go
everyone
for it.
gets to enjoy it. It's just the thing of, it's just any other way. Nobody wants to be depicted as if we already get negative media attention from paid media through the government, which would be the big news companies. Which every time you turn on the channel, they're displaying protesters. They're saying, oh, they're doing this, they're tearing up this, but they never show when protesters like you all show when we're actually peacefully protesting, when we're having different vigils where there's no violence, there's no officers, there's no nothing but people just coming together. So with that with being said, I would just say, honestly, everybody has the right to do anything. We're not telling anybody, honestly, you can't do this. There's no gun being put up to anybody's head. But we definitely don't want people to view us in a way where it's always negative. We want people to understand that we have been fighting for this for a while. And it may be you behind that camera that have been fighting the same fight as well. So, yes, you have the right to do it, but just do it in a positive way. And that goes both ways. That's not saying that one person is held at a less accountable. Everybody is held at the same accountability. And we should hold our own selves accountable. You know, it shouldn't be where a group of people have to tell the next person, hey, don't do that to that person. You should be able to check it to yourself and ask yourself, is this person really doing something that's harmful to me? No, they're not. So they have the right to do what they want to do. Because whether we want that negative attention or not, eventually we're still going to get it from people that we may never even see that can record us. So regardless, we can't fight everyone. And that's just a personal thing that protesters in general nationwide have to work on. It's not just here in LA, it's everywhere. Because I've been to a lot of places protesting. And honestly, when they feel like it's negativity, they do the same thing. So we have to all in general hold ourselves accountable and take a step back and look and really see, is it really harmful? Is it really negative? Or are we just overreacting?
Likewise, I've experienced that elsewhere. I've experienced it in Portland. I've experienced in Seattle, and I can understand the sentiments on the side of the protesters. However, at the same time, at least the way I view it is, it's the First Amendment that allows protesters to be out protesting, and it's the First Amendment that allows media to be out there filming it. And if you take that away, then how do protesters actually have the liberty to go out and protest? But I don't want to inject too much of my opinion in it. And actually, from what I've seen of you in action, is that I would think that most likely, maybe not for sure, but most likely if I found myself in some of those situations I did with protesters demanding that I stop filming, had you been there at the time, I think I could have had a dialogue with you, because from my observation of you in action, even when it was getting very heated, I could see how there was always room for communication between you and the police. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about your style of protesting, and whether or not that is the case, whether you are able to dialogue and communicate with police, or maybe even media who are viewed as somewhat hostile.
Yeah, so my way of protesting, honestly, is simple, and it's very old fashioned. Um, when I communicate with officers, it's not more or less me listening fully to what they want. It's me letting them know this is what we want. And in order for us to calm down and for you to understand that we need this way to be able to go, as such as if we were protesting, marching, trying to get through when they kettle us, or let's say if they're trying to harm us. I simply stated very firm, letting them know, like, hey, in order for us to calm down, you have to calm down. In order for us to do something, you have to do it. It has to be 50-50. It has to be a meeting in the middle. And if there is never a meeting in the middle, nothing will ever be done peacefully or in a way where anybody will feel like, okay, I got what I needed and they got what they needed. But when you're able to have that simple conversation, if you want something, okay, do it like this. I need something, I'm going to do it this way. And if we're able to come in agreement, then yes, everybody's going to walk away in a way where they feel complete. So I do offer a sense of not so much a full conversation with the police, but a simple yes or no. Now with media, it's a different story because media deserves a voice. They deserve a reason to say, I'm out here because of this, or I do this because of this, because I don't know why y'all here, but I know why the police are out here. So you have to be able to decipher between the two. And that's simply why I never really have those problems when it comes to the media, because I will ask them straightforward, what are you really here for? Are you here to record us in a negative way? Or are you here because you actually support Black lives? Or are you just here because you just want to be out here and you just wanted to record? Because either way, you have the right to record, but I just want to know for my safety.
But then, in your opinion, if they just want to be out there to record, or if media do not support Black Lives Matter, then do you think that they should be allowed to stand there and record, or do you think that they should be escorted out or forced out?
It's their right. They have the right to do whatever they want. People choose to do anything differently. My particular opinion is do whatever the hell you feel, because no matter what, my message will be displayed as cutthroat and as positive as it has always been. Because if you know how to play with the cameras, which is you know how to say what you need to say in the amount of time that you need to say it, then no matter if it's negative media, positive media, your message will always be displayed as a positive way and people will understand it. So it's a lot of people that just don't know how to accept that we're going to have that negativity out there. That's what it's meant for. It's meant for us to be distracted and not to be able to get along. Because in the end, everybody is going to be leaning upon everybody. It's not even going to be about who's really for Black people, who's really for this. None of that is going to matter. We're all going to be fighting against one thing, and that's the system.
We were starting to get into it, but we veered off slightly. When you were talking about trying to get the police to meet you in the middle, would they ever meet you in the middle? Would there be de-escalation sometimes when you try to get them to meet you in the middle, whatever exactly that means?
Oh, yes. If you let them know that they need to do something in order for you to do something, and you actually stand firm against what you're saying, then they will do it. It's been plenty of times. There was a time, I can't remember exactly when, but it was a couple of months ago here in LA. And we were in front of City Hall and we were kettled in by the police. And they were ready to fire tear gas and rubber bullets into the crowd. And I stood in front of them and I let their chief and commander, whoever, sergeant, whoever was out there, I let them know that in order for us to stand down and stand back, you all have to stand down and stand back and not harm us, because we are only doing this because we are afraid of what you may do. And when we stood our ground and stood there and let them know that the only way we're going to do that is when they do it, they did it. That situation led none of us to be arrested that night. None of us got harmed that night. Nobody got hit with tear gas, rubber bullets, nothing. It was a simple, yes, we're going to do this, and yes, you're going to do it. And that's all it needs to be.
Was that the night when people were in the 3rd Street tunnel?
No, that was a completely another night. This night, the only thing that the police did to lash back at us was they towed 8 cars. And when they towed those 8 cars, we as a community got together, and myself and other members of DOPE, we went up there and got all the people's cars out of the tow yard.
You know what? I think I was there that night. That was that the day that there was vandalism at the federal buildings in LA?
I don't believe there was that night. I believe that was the night before.
Okay, well, I was there the night that there was a standoff outside City Hall, actually in multiple places after there was vandalism at the federal buildings. I remember watching Black Unity cars getting towed. But enough enough on that note. We spoke several months back. You talked about Black Unity having specific demands, such as defunding the police by a significant amount. I don't remember if you said an exact amount, but defunding the police by a specific amount and getting certain people into office. Have any of those demands been met? Or met to the
Yes,
extent?
not here in LA fully, but we have had those demands met in other states where we are protesting. In Missouri, we got a protester in the actual seat. She is the Senate of Missouri. Her name is Cora Bush. She is a African American woman. And we have actually other people, I can't remember their exact names, in other states that are elected officials or have seats in city hall offices. Here in LA, they're still working towards that. They do have the DA, Jackie Lacey, out of office, so that is a big and good thing. And they have a new DA who has so far, from what I've seen, been upholding his word, but we'll see how that continues to go because there's no guarantee. People change every day. So we still have a lot of work, but we're working towards it.
The new DA was something I specifically wanted to ask you about. So I remember for months people were calling for Jackie Lacey to go, and now she's gone and George Gascon's taken over, and he's talking about major changes like doing away with enhancements to criminal charges, trying to end cash bail, and all kinds of stuff that would, at least in my opinion, and the opinion of most observers, would be really significant reforms. But so is your position more like wait and see on what Gascon is proposing?
No, I wait on no one. I wait on no one when it comes to their word because anybody's word can be tarnished. So I continue to do the work that is needed in order to make these changes, whether they're small or big. And if they uphold their word, they do. And if they don't, well, then of course we know.
And what about defunding the police? So there have been, I mean, at least several months ago, LAPD or the city of LA came out with an announcement about defunding the police. Has that been enough for you? Is that actually coming to fruition? And is Black Unity and Black Lives Matter protesters, are they seeking a lot more in terms of defunding the police in the LA area?
No, defunding the police means getting rid of the police, defunding them completely from every dime they have. That does not mean keep defunding them by a couple of billions of dollars or a couple of millions of dollars. They can easily gain that back from the community. So we don't honestly need them. And we're working towards continuously trying to get them completely defunded. It has not happened as of yet completely, but it will. Everything takes time. Nothing that we're asking for is going to happen overnight. And we know that. And that's why most of us have been fighting so long.
So if the police were to be completely defunded in LA, what would that look like? What kind of security force or community policing force would replace them?
that would look like how it was back in the day when we grew up. The community protecting each other, where you can go to your next door neighbor's house if you do need help, where you can ask a young man in the community for help with whatever that may be. That simply means the community protecting each other. And it's possible. It's possible. It has happened way before me and you both were here.
All right, lastly, what can be expected of Black unity in the near future? And likewise, where do you see the general situation in the LA area heading in terms of policing, in terms of protests, in terms of police brutality and everything related?
To be honest, I collab a lot with Black Unity, but I am not a actual leader of Black Unity. My organization is Dope Movement. But what I do see Black Unity doing and what they're trying to do, as we have been talking about, they're trying to form another community visual for the community to see. They're continuously trying to get other fellow protesters out of jail and dropped of all their charges. They actually got one of them out, actually got his charges dropped. His name is E-Man. I don't know if you've heard of him. But he recently got out. He was held in jail for $1 million bond. And with them protesting and constantly going out there, they were able to get all of that dropped against him. And now he's currently out continuously protesting with us.
What was he arrested for?
He was arrested for false charges against him. I don't remember what those exact charges were, but that is exactly why they were dropped, because they were false.
And do you see major changes coming? Do you see protests being ongoing in the LA area indefinitely? What do you see in the coming months or even years?
To be honest, I see protests continuously happening. Like I said, nothing is going to happen overnight. I do see drastic changes in our future, whether people want to believe it or not. I see a lot of things as far as the community getting their needs met, whether that's big or small. First, we're trying to really start off with that homeless community, getting the homeless community off and out of the streets. Helping build our community back up to have a good feeling about living where you live or being able to go where you want to go. Funding the community, actually giving out jobs to young ones. So we're doing things like that, and I see things like that actually happening on a bigger scale. So those are the plans that we have, and we're just waiting to keep pushing forward with them and get everyone involved nationwide.
All right. Any final words, Bri?
Honestly, just continue to help your community. Remember, community is unity. And just remember what you're here for. Rather you're with a group of people or by yourself. Remember what your purpose is and the reason why you want to support Black lives, brown lives, Indigenous lives, or support people in general. Just remember what you are here for.
And is there any, how could people find your organization? Is there an Instagram profile or where should they go to find out about it?
Yes, so if you want to find out more about Dope Movement, you can actually find us on Instagram. It is going to be at D_O_P_E_movement_. You can message us, you can do whatever, and we will stay in contact with you. If you want to learn about different events we're doing, we're actually doing something right now this month for the homeless. It's called a gift for the homeless. We're taking donations and we're gift wrapping them, and we're making the homeless feel special around these holidays because they normally don't have holidays. So we're trying to do something special while still giving them what they need. And that's ways to give back to your community. So check us out and just continue to help.
All right, I'll see that link ends up in the description of the video. Thank you very much, Bri. Best of luck with all your endeavors, and I appreciate you taking the time to discuss what's been a very interesting year.
Yes, thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.